when it comes to heart disease, right? Cardiovascular disease. Cut out the fat, get off the saturated fat, fat. It is basically what everybody blames. But what about sugar? Can sugar actually be the main contributor? So stay tuned. We're going to get into that. But first, I just set this up so I could go live on Instagram, and I'm going to do that. So let me start Instagram. Instagram. Sorry, it was all set up, and then something went wrong. Instagram. Got it. All right. So as you guys get settled, think about your questions when it comes to your questions about sugar versus fat versus everything else. But okay, what's happening here? Next? No? X? All right, I'm on Instagram. I always struggle with this. Why do I struggle with this? No? I'm going to go to home. And when I say add, yes. Okay, so I'm going to say a live. We are going to go live. So if you're already on YouTube or Facebook, get ready. We also are going live on Instagram. And it's about to do that now. All right. And I'm live, right? I go like this. Okay, it's checking connections. And we are live, but somehow or other my light went off. So let me get the other light closer. And it looks very dark on the phone, but it looks nice and bright here. So let me do this. All right, well, it's the best I can do. So guys, fat versus sugar. Fat gets blamed for heart disease all the time, every which way you look. But what about the connection with sugar? That, my friends, is what we're going to discuss on today's video and today's live. It's that, trying to not say that fat doesn't matter, but saying that what is the contributing factor that sugar has. So welcome back to the channel. I'm Dr. Rita Marie Loscalzo, and I love to share with health and wellness practitioners how they can help their clients and patients get better using natural methods, not just covering up symptoms with the drugs and surgeries. And I also help people to do the same. And I love to help people who love to be helped. I love to help people who are dedicated to their health and are ready to really have a difference in their lives. So we're going to get started with today's topic. Fat versus sugar, which is it to blame? So even when it comes to something really obvious like diabetes, the fat people want to blame the fat, the people who believe that fat is the root to all evil. Whereas some of us have done a lot of research and we realize that sugar, refined carbs, things like that, and other things like fats, the bad fats that hurt receptors, contribute to insulin resistance and diabetes. But what about poor old heart disease, right? We think about that in terms of get off the saturated fats, stop eating things that contain cholesterol, and doing things to support our system that way. And yes, those are good recommendations. But there have been studies over and over again, studies that date back as early as the 1930s that talk about the connection between sugar, blood sugar, insulin resistance, and heart disease. There are many reports that share that one of the most important factors, one of the most common causes of people who die suddenly, drop dead suddenly of sudden heart failure, is insulin resistance and diabetes. That's what happened to my parents, both my parents, within 2 years of each other. Neither one of them had been diagnosed with risk factor. Yeah, my father had a little bit of elevated blood pressure. I think that he put on medication for a while and then had somehow gotten it under control. So his blood pressure was not through the roof. But my mom, she didn't have any kind of conditions, right? But arthritis she'd been diagnosed with, and she had some gallbladder problems with this, which is a fat issue when she was in her 40s. But she fit the profile that we use and we're taught in medicine, which is female, fat, fertile, and 40. She had 9 kids, 8 of them by the time she was 40. She wasn't fat, but she had a little of that extra weight around her middle. Female and 40. Okay, so she fit that profile. And yes, her lifestyle contributed, no doubt about it. Yes, she ate crappy fats. She ate processed meats, bologna and salami and ham and a fair amount of meat. She didn't eat enough vegetables. So her lifestyle contributed. But did it contribute? Did she have an insulin resistance problem before she suddenly had a heart attack? Or did she have a true heart problem that wasn't picked up? My guess is that there was probably a little bit of both. And back then there weren't a lot of functional medicine doctors, and moms don't generally listen to their daughters. But we didn't know. We didn't have a lot of the testing that we can do now with advanced cardiac profiles and looking at oxidized cholesterol, LDLs. So I'm not going to go there. Where I really want to go is, how do we look at the sugar and actually give the blame where it's done? I think it was a researcher named Panda, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not great with remembering researchers' names, but I read a lot of papers by him. And he kept trying to convince people that it was sugar, not fat, that we should be focusing on. But what happened is we went through this whole fat craze. Everybody's got to lower their fat, low fat this, low fat that. And people started to do it. Not everybody did it. And we didn't see a change in the heart disease rates. We actually might have seen an increase because in the time when that was promoted, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and now the rates have gone up. What happens and what people don't realize is that when you take away fat, you've got to replace the energy source. You've got to replace the calories. And most people replace the calories with sugar. So all the low fat, no fat are loaded with all kinds of processed ingredients. So it's making people sicker. When people eat sugar, and when I say sugar, I don't just mean you're eating little, cubes of sugar or refined table sugar. I mean sugar in the way of sugar, agave syrup, maple syrup, honey, white flour, even flour that's whole grain. For lots of people who are sensitive, it's like sugar. It shoots that blood sugar up. When the blood sugar goes up, guess what else goes up? Insulin. Insulin tries to get all that energy we just ate into the cells. And then we develop insulin resistance, which is a precursor to diabetes. Even if you never go on to have diabetes, that insulin is damaging your system. And the way it relates to cardiovascular diseases and symptoms, blood pressure, elevated insulin stiffens the artery walls, stiffens them so they're not as fluid, increases blood pressure. That lack of being able to respond, like you have to run after a kid that's running into the street or chasing a bus or anything like that. What happens is when those arteries can't expand, contract, and if there's any plaque buildup, which most people have some plaque buildup, some people more than others, but if there's any plaque buildup and any of that plaque breaks off as a loose plaque and starts floating through the bloodstream, it can get to the arteries, coronary arteries. That's where they get stuck. And guess what? That's when we have heart attacks. My mom didn't have a second chance. She went out in the morning. She did her gardening. She came back in. She might have had a cigarette. She had her lunch, which was, a sandwich of some sort, right? High glycemic. And then she lay down to take her nap, which she always did after she ate because she was always tired after eating. That's a cardinal sign of insulin resistance. And that's one of the things we look for pre-insulin resistance. Nobody talked to her about it. Nobody asked her about it. Nobody recommended that she stop eating the bologna sandwiches or stop smoking, right? And she died at age 56, way too young, right? Way, 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 way too young. But I don't think her problem was just related to fat. Yeah, she had bad fats. Yes, she had processed fats. But she also ate a lot of white bread. Wonder Bread was a staple in our house. She drank Kool-Aid because they couldn't afford to buy a soda and everybody else was drinking soda. So they bought Kool-Aid, 5 cents a pack. And then you add 2 cups of sugar to it and you can feed, refresh, whatever you want to call it, lots of kids from that. We had 9, right? We had 9. We had to do budget stuff. So here's the thing. Fat, yes, contributes to cardiovascular disease. Bad fats, hydrogenated fats, too much saturated fats, imbalance in omega-6 and 3 fats. All of that stuff contributes to heart disease. And it contributes to insulin resistance. And it contributes to autoimmune and inflammatory conditions. Not good. I'm not saying fat is off the hook. But if you have someone, if you're a practitioner, or if you yourself are eating lots of avocados, that's probably not going to cause you to have a heart attack. If you're eating a balance of omega-6s and 3s, and we teach people how to do that, and we teach our practitioners, we give you spreadsheets so you can calculate that for people, having a balance of omega-6 and 3 fats. I don't know that people get the diseases, but when we look at the epidemiological studies, looking at what's happening when people are doing these things, what happens is the people that they're studying are not eating their fats in the way of avocado and fresh coconut or nuts and seeds balanced in omega-3s, raw nuts and seeds. If they are eating nuts and seeds, it's the planters roasted in the can with some kind of soybean oil or something on them. When people are eating good fats, they can keep their inflammation in balance. Not going to really contribute. There's no studies that show that contributes. There are studies who show that people have lower incidences when they're eating mostly plant-based whole food fats like that, but not increased. But you can have somebody who's eating really good fats, really good fat ratios, but they're eating too much sugar, right? They replaced their fat, the people who are standard American diet. Like, you hear this stuff. You replace your fat with other foods that are fat-free or low fat. And guess what? You end up getting a lot of processed ingredients, and you end up getting too much in the way of sugar because you're hungry and you have to replace those calories. Low-fat diets. And, for some, it's even rice, right? For me, if I eat rice, my blood sugar goes up. If I eat corn, not just whole corn off the cob, but if I eat corn flour, anything, my sugar goes way up because I have a tendency to the blood sugars via genetics, right? So genetics do play a role. But most people who go on a low-fat diet, you're going to see them eating all these fat-free, even sugar-free cookies. But what's in the sugar-free cookies? Flour, right? Colorings, all this other stuff. So fat, sugar, it's a debate in the health community. Go out and do a Google search and you'll find lots of articles on both sides. And what I challenge you to do for yourself or with your patients is do this challenge, right? Go get your blood numbers done. Get your lipid panel done. Get a complete lipid panel done that includes the oxidized LDL and the particle sizes and lipoprotein little a. Get a complete lipid profile. And then go try a low-fat diet and see what happens. Low fat with as much sugar and flour and all that stuff as you want. Then go get your numbers tested again. Then go back and do it the other way. Get on a diet that has moderate fat in the form of balanced fats, whole food plant-based fats, monounsaturates, which have been shown to be protective of heart disease, like olives. I don't believe in oil. People say olive oil helps me. I don't believe in oil just because it's fractured. It doesn't have the fiber and all the other nutrients. Right? So go and do a whole food, plant-based, fat-rich diet and low sugar. Don't eat flour. No flour. Don't eat any of that stuff and see what happens. So if you want more information about this, stay tuned to the channel. Subscribe, like me, follow me. And I'm putting out a lot of stuff coming up. And look up, if you're on YouTube, look up above. You'll see some other videos that you can watch. And I encourage you to stay tuned. Comment. Let's have a conversation. Comment, ask your questions. Share if you find some research. I'm always open to being proven wrong. Always. If I'm wrong, I want to change my mind because my goal is to be as healthy as I possibly can and help people to be as healthy as they possibly can. But every single person that has said to me, there's studies that show that insulin resistance is related to fat. The studies did not show that when you actually read them. Okay, so go ahead and like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.